Good evening, y'all, and welcome to another great episode of Mason Dixon Podcast with y'all's host today, Vinny, Cameron, Corey, and Mr. Philip Hamilton. Thank you for joining us. Remember, as always, y'all, the views and opinions expressed here on Mason Dixon Podcast and on MAD, our own and just your own views, and they don't represent the views and opinions of any other person, group, or organization. Well, y'all, based on the title, I think everyone knows what we're going to be talking about tonight. It's going to be the disaster that happened on TV last week. I mean, really, y'all, you know it's bad when they are talking about the debate days after, all throughout the weekend. And despite all the best damage control from that one magazine to Time Magazine and everything else in between to try to sweep up this disaster, I think it's going to be a pretty interesting year. What say y'all?
I agree. Yeah, definitely.
I agree big time. I mean, after the debate, it's just one big dumpster fire for the DNC.
Yep. They're doing damage control every day. I think I was mentioning before the show and everything. The funniest part about the whole thing is the fact that the media, as soon as the debate was over, they immediately started calling for them to replace Biden. And then it got so bad to the point that he had to go back to Camp David after being there for an entire week and consult with his family about whether he should stay in the race or not. You know, I think that says a lot. And now they're kind of forced to stay in the race because, for one, we're like a month out from the DNC convention. Two, it would be too late for them to, put Gavin Newsom in, or Whitmer, I think is the other candidate that was mentioned for fundraising. They'd be way behind, and I don't think they can transfer any of that money. So that's where we're at right now with that.
Well, I'd like to state, the phrase that history does repeat itself. And, in 1968, Lyndon B. Johnson, right before the Democratic National Convention, which was being hosted in Chicago, decided to drop out of the race. And now we're facing, in the year 2024, another Democratic National Convention in Chicago, and it appears that we're going to have President Biden dropping out, and maybe we'll have Kamala Harris, maybe we'll have Gavin Newsom. But, Kamala Harris is even less popular than Biden, so unlikely it's going to be her, but I think Gavin Newsom's a much more likely candidate, or they may choose someone else. It's yet to be seen, but I know Biden was with his children, his wife, and even his grandchildren discussing his political future. And he has stated to the media that he feels humiliated by the debate.
Yeah, I've seen that as well. Yeah.
And it's sad because I think really, there comes a point in time, and there's people in their 80s that they still got it and they can run with it. But there comes a point in time where if you know that, maybe something isn't quite right, or you had an entire year roughly, and even before that, where the press secretary, when questioned on his health, she would make countless statements. He's energetic, or she wouldn't answer the question, and she would just say something like, "Yeah, he ran a few miles or something," or he bikes a lot, and and you see this debate, and I loved how the entire debate Trump was very calm, and it was almost like Biden was making himself look like a fool the entire time. And when he was, getting cranky with Trump, and when Trump said, let's not act like children, Biden whips around. Well, you're a child. I mean,
and how he reiterates that lie about Trump calling veterans suckers and losers, and you see,
that stuff,
getting irate right there, and mentioning his son Bo.
The biggest thing about that too, about that quote, is I'm pretty sure that it came from Mark Milley, I think it's his name. Mark Milley, whatever.
Milley. And
he's a disgrace. He's a disgrace anyway. He's the same one that said he would go and call China if Trump tried to do something, And
he's also why we lost Arlington, part of the reason.
Yeah. So he's a straight up communist, if I'm being completely honest. He's, like I say, he's a disgrace. I did not like him at all. So I don't believe a word. He's one general versus, like Trump said, 19 other people that had said he never said that. And tell me this, why would he say that as commander-in-chief? Actions speak louder than words, and Trump did a lot of good things for our military. And look at Biden, what he's done, and to the fact that the recruitment is down, like, I don't know the exact percentage, but it's to the point they're going to end up having to have a draft in the future if something happens.
Yeah,
that
they
says
already
a lot too.
passed the draft.
Yeah,
they passed
did. Mm-hmm. It's not like
but if you have a tattoo of the Confederate flag on your body, they don't want you. Well, at least under the Biden administration, they don't want you.
Yeah. Which is going to be really that they're already having a recruitment problem as is. So
yeah, that's what I mentioned. Yeah,
I mean, if we all know and realize that a good chunk of volunteer servicemen come from the South and parts of the Midwest, and without us Southern boys, what do you have in your military? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're right.
And to mention, Southern patriots who've been fighting, this is a great book. It's called Bedford Goes to War. I was actually at the Bedford Museum last month during, they were celebrating the 80th anniversary of D-Day. And of course, Bedford, they lost more locals than any locality in the entire United States, which is why the National D-Day Memorial is over there, which is a very beautiful place if you haven't a chance to visit yet. But, this book details, the folks from Bedford who served in the American Revolution during the war between the states, during World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and other conflicts. And you're right. The Southern folks come out to fight, and they should not be discouraged from enlisting. And hopefully under a Trump administration, which is more likely to happen last week than it ever has been before, and with the Supreme Court ruling that occurred earlier today, which grants Trump presidential immunity. And, Jack Smith is going to have to drop that case. I just don't see a path forward for him. It looks that things are going very well. And, I know that Trump's likelihood of becoming president has jumped about 10 percentage points, which is astronomical considering, this debate really was a game changer in many ways. And, Trump was at his best. Biden was at his absolute worst. And I actually had the opportunity to see Donald Trump in person in Chesapeake, Virginia. It was his first rally after the debacle of the debate. And he did have some zingers. He repeated that line again that Biden didn't even know what he was saying, and that Trump didn't even know what he was saying part of the time when he said that we can defeat Medicaid. It's like, what the heck is he talking about? I thought he was all about bigger government and expanding Medicaid.
He said, we beat Medicaid.
It now. And you mentioned how no soldiers died under his administration. What about those 13 soldiers who died in Afghanistan? That was a huge gaffe. And veterans are pissed about that.
What about the one that happened recently? There was a couple that were killed. I'm trying to think, where was it? Was it Iraq or something? Maybe that happened recently. There was a bombing or something in the last few months.
I think it was Yemen.
Maybe. See, that's still under his administration, even still. So he can't say that it never happened.
I know. And there's a bunch of stuff that went on under his watch. I mean, taking the Houthis off the watch list and practically attacking our shipping lanes.
Yep, that's true too. It was.
Yeah, that was surprisingly, teleprompter Trump beat the Biden on the debate stage. I mean, he didn't throw any zingers like you would have seen from his 2016 campaign trail, and as we all know, the debate was practically rigged against Trump. The rules, especially the part where they'll shut off his mic or anyone's mic, and I noticed how he took their little plan and turned it on itself.
True. Yeah.
They had every option possible that y'all could imagine, from no audience. Trump didn't have any, to my knowledge, maybe had a few people there, if anything. Very limited. No fans, no nothing. They had all these what they called safety checks, where we're going to mute the audience, we're going to mute the mics. If Trump talks over him, we're turning his mic off. And despite that, I liked how Trump was just so calm, and he took all that. And when Biden said something just so nasty and ridiculous and outlandish, the question they asked Trump, I like how he says, before that, I want to mention and just follow up on this and just gave them like all this information that blew Biden out of the water. And exactly to that point, to Phil's point with the 13 soldiers, I mean, like, I want to know, does he actually believe his own lies? Because that's concerning. And it's even more concerning if he doesn't remember that, because that was such a disaster. The withdrawal, lives lost, it could have been handled differently. And under his administration, they still had lives that were lost overseas. So it's almost like he's just turning his back on them, saying, nothing to see here, folks. That wasn't us. That was all Trump's fault.
Well, to your point about,
and on top of that,
you remember when they were bringing the bodies back home to U.S. and he's standing out there, waiting on them to come back or whatever, and he's just standing there looking at his watch the entire time. That was disrespectful as all get out too.
Every service that we've had was like that with him. And I remember with Arlington, the last service that we had when that memorial was there was on Veterans Day. And that same day, Biden was there in the cemetery and all that. He starts wandering around and people are looking like, what the heck is this? Yeah. And he has a tendency to do that. And again, I am not diagnosing anybody. I am not suggesting this. It's when you have an older adult, you have got to worry about any kind of cognitive decline. That's just the nature of aging. It happens. We've all been there with that one family member that is showing signs of slowing cognition. Part of that is when they start getting like that, they just kind of wander out, they zone out, and it's dangerous. It's a safety. Like, could he fall over? And you actually feel bad for the poor guy because, when you have his family members and his wife, they have got to know what's going on. And the fact that they are not intervening, that they're letting this poor guy get like ridiculed by even CNN. Even CNN responded like viciously. And it's like, wow, like, why aren't they jumping in and saying this is wrong?
Agreed. Yeah.
Well, Biden's usefulness has ended. That's really what it comes down to.
That's right.
And
it's a puppet.
Another thing, I'd say he is exhibiting signs of dementia. They said he had a cold. It's like, no, it's dementia. You have good days and you have bad days. I've known, I've had friends who've had parents with dementia. They've described it to me. So I have a certain understanding of what's going on. So Biden is certainly exhibiting that. And another thing I'll throw out there too is that, Biden, he mentioned my hometown of Charlottesville, Virginia, which is where I currently live. And that was, a big part of the debate as well, because he says, well, I ran for president because of the events of Charlottesville in 2017 and that Trump was, ill-advised or, it was wrong to say that both sides were good people. But he said that that people were coming out of the woods in downtown Charlottesville. Like, I haven't seen a forest in downtown Charlottesville before. I mean, if you go down there, it's, there's some skyscrapers, there's historical buildings, but a forest, I don't know where the hell he got that from.
There's no telling, really.
To my mom, because she was like, because she knows I always go to Virginia and Maryland and travel down to North Carolina sometimes. And I'm like, does he even know the geography? Because to my knowledge, again, correct me if I'm wrong, there is not a forest in Charlottesville.
No. Unless you consider the cemetery because it has trees around it. He's like, they come out of the cemetery. that could be a possibility, I guess. That's the only thing I could think of. But unless
you count that we're coming out of the woods into the city, but like you said, there's not much forestry around Charlottesville. It's
unless mountainous, but
when folks came out of McIntyre Park, there's woods around there, but you can't call it a forest. But if this is such an important issue for Biden, he should be able to make such important distinctions such as those. And clearly, he either doesn't remember or he didn't care enough, as he claims.
He's just making it up. That's what he's doing. He's trying to, I mean, he's straight up lying anyway. But I don't. I'm trying to understand.
One other thing I like to mention too is that there is still a Confederate monument standing in Charlottesville.
Yep.
They did not take all of them down.
Yep.
There's one in a cemetery which is right across the street from UVA.
Yep.
Which is honoring the Confederate veterans of Albemarle County. Now, the one they took down in front of the courthouse has actually been relocated to Newmarket. It's been re-erected on the Newmarket battlefield.
So speaking of that, at that same cemetery is and my 4th grade uncle, and we're working on getting him a headstone, and he's buried there in that cemetery. And I got the coordinates about where he's at, whatever. I've contacted the cemetery division or whatever. So we're getting that taken care of here in the next maybe few months. And, it's right near the monument too, so that's pretty cool. So excited for that.
Here's some other good news too on monuments, because this should make you all feel better. Delaware, which has one Confederate memorial on a museum, so it's on museum property. It always has been. So when all this nonsense happened, and like I said, it was shaped. They're going to play a game of psychological shaping and say, well, all right, move them to museums. This is the whole monument is the state flag of Delaware, the Confederate battle flag, and the monument. That's the whole thing. What they think is the monument. It's in the contract. The whole thing's a memorial. And what happens is they think the flag is separate. The flag is not separate. And I'm like, wait a minute. This flag is on museum property. It's at a museum. So is it no longer good enough? And the one mayor of Georgetown was saying that, okay, take the flag down and I'll pay for, glass display. No, that flag is staying up. That's part of that. That's part of the memorial. And they had this little meeting. Now, this meeting they had, even though it was open to the public and I registered and all that, we had 2 other members from the Delaware SCV come out there and, show support. And they did not have any kind of open comments. They closed off the comments and they did what's called a monologue. They had 4 speakers, and every speaker had so much more hate. The most hateful one was the quote-unquote lawyer historian, who had no idea what he was talking about with the thing. And the other gentleman was a Republican who was in office in Delaware, who is anti-monument, and he's saying that he might lose office because his voter base, the conservatives, are saying, no, we preserve all history. This is ridiculous that you're against this memorial. So he's probably going to lose election. And he was real fired up and sassy. And because we were not allowed to, give comments, we all had decorum. But what I did was when they allowed us to use the note cards to write questions down, my 2 questions got talked about. One of them was talking about the former governor of Delaware. God bless her. She passed on. She was the last of the few true Democrats that actually cared about the working people, cared about history, and didn't believe in this, DEI nonsense. And that was Ruth Ann Minner. She was the first female governor and only female governor of Delaware that they've ever had. She signed off on the memorial and signed off on a proclamation that designated a week in May as Confederate History and Heritage Week in Delaware. And she was very proud of this memorial. And I asked about that question. The entire audience was trying to dance around that because the majority of them were Democrats. Then I asked the other question saying, why is it the governor of Delaware, who was then, vice governor or lieutenant governor, why was he okay with that monument? Never cared and actually spoke out in support of it. But all of a sudden now it's an issue. They were very quick to just jump around and dance around it. And the one lady just shouts in, well, he has an issue with it now. They made themselves look like fools on their Zoom meeting and in their meeting that was recorded. After the fact, I'm there, I'm talking to people, and I'm saying, look, we might not agree, but Confederate heritage was diverse. Look up Teresa Roan, her video, and I had the link. Look up this video and this one. Look up Sally Tompkins. Jewish Americans. Who's here is a Jewish American? Some of them raise their hands. Did you guys know that one of the best Jewish American sculptors, Sir Moses Ezekiel, his grave was vandalized and his grave was taken down in Arlington? They had no idea. I said, well, there's the white papers. Here's the link right here. We had rabbis speak out for this memorial. This is what's happening in America, y'all. And it's not it's not a simple history when you talk about the war between the states. There were free men of color that fought in the Confederacy, and Teresa Roan covers some of their stories. So some of them were receptive. And I even gave the lady who was part of the NAACP a hug. I said, we don't hate no one. It ain't about hate at all. It's a proud Southern heritage.
Yeah, and I was shocked to find out that I believe this guy was a French aristocrat who became a Confederate general, also fought in the Confederate Army, and I shock people to this day when I show them a picture of a gentleman from my home state of Arkansas. His name is Daniel Clayton Winsett. You see him at a reunion with a Boy Scout, full uniform, reunion medals, And another picture, there's 2 Boy Scouts helping him out of a car, and he's in his 80s. And if y'all ever seen the video of called "Forgotten Men in Gray," you see him talk where he says, "With Marmaduke, Joe Shelby, bodyguard," and proudly showing his bugle. I believe not only was he a bodyguard, from what it looked like, he was the bugler. Oh yeah.
And I think what's really scary now is that even museums, because this is something that, politically down the road, I hope gets addressed, because it typically is more so on the left. And when it comes to the, historical artifacts or even like colonial style stuff, that's all under attack. So, for example, Delaware had a beautiful setup in Georgetown, and it had what the town looked like because it changed very little. A lot of the old structures are there. You could learn about the buildings, how the society looked. They had an issue because they had the pillory post and they had a whipping post. Delaware was, I think, the last state to even outlaw like public whipping. And it was one of those things that it was a state punishment. It was a neat, morbid history. And it was one of those things that if you go to a colonial village, they have it there. And Delaware has a lot of public history. Well, that was offensive, so they removed it. And that was recently. And it was just so ridiculous. Like, people will go there to learn about the history, get to interact with it because it made learning fun. It brought it to life. Like to sit there and just stare at a textbook the entire day versus going in there, going to a historic home, seeing the historical objects there. If you're lucky, getting to hold some of them. That's what brings history alive. And I think what's happening now is museums have just caved in. I mean, even Harvard has to do damage control because that school has been in a lot of deep doo-doo for their cadaver labs selling human body parts. Now, in their medical school collection, they had a lot of cool oddities. It's part of science and it's part of history. And back in the day, the big thing with the medical textbooks was having the books that were bound in the human skin of the cadaver. And this book was over like 200 something years old. Well, they thought it was offensive because one person complained and they destroyed the artifact. And it was one of those things like you can't change the past. You can learn from it. And that's just an artifact. It's a part of history that happened. And instead of, just taking it for what it was, they're now going to destroying artifacts they deem offensive. And it's just one of those things that, I think the tide is turning on that because, there was a recent case where in Target, somebody was offended by something and the store told them, deal with it.
Yeah. I think I'm hearing about that.
And what
I wish I could say that more often.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're past a certain month now, so hopefully that's the case.
And I think that even there are some people on the left that are waking up and saying enough is enough. And there are some people on the right that are finally speaking out. Because when I would do my flagging in New Jersey, I used to have people on the right going, don't do that. That makes us look bad. And then when they realized all the times I would have it, I was the most well-spoken person there, along with several of my friends that, would get trained in how to talk to the media, how to deal with it. And our flaggers, when we're up there, we have a moral code. We use clean language. We smile and wave. Someone's giving you a hard day. God bless you. That's all I got to say. Jesus loves you.
Yeah.
It's like an exorcism.
Actually, yesterday, I listened to a excellent service from my pastor at the Albemarle Baptist Church. And since it was the last day of Pride Month, he was talking about the abomination, which is pride, because the Biden administration, many others have been celebrating sin, homosexuality, the LGBTQ plus movement, transgenderism. Right. I mean, you name it. The mutilation of our children, and it really goes back
and scandalizing our
to
children.
1999 when Bill Clinton he declared June to be a month to celebrate the homosexuals and other folks in the community. And I know my pastor, he mentioned that June should be a month of humility rather than pride. And, God looks kindly to humility and he hates pride. And it's very strange that in our government, our current government, that we're celebrating this. And we even have the pride flags up on, in front of the White House and other federal buildings. I know there's some folks who've seen all these flags when they've visited DC. I was in DC last month to see Tulsi Gabbard for a Second Amendment event, but I chose not to go to downtown DC because I didn't want to see all those flags.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so bad. And some of them are 24/7 because what's happened is I go to DC for one of my heritage groups for Heritage Week in April, and they're all over the place. And it's we have several buildings because New Jersey is known for having a lot of pharmaceutical companies. And it's ridiculous how these companies have the virtue signaling. There's a pride flag almost 24/7 on several of their big corporations. But then if you go down the other stretch, for Pride Month, they had this rainbow flag that they keep adding more of the colors and the triangles and the bars. And then for Juneteenth, they had another flagpole put in, and they put the Pan-African flag colors. And I'm like, this is like the craziest thing like that. You know, these companies are now going all out. They're no longer focusing on what their job should be for pharmaceuticals or building a company. And that they're wasting all these funds on this DEI team that gets paid to promote Pride. And it's not just Pride Month, y'all. I've seen October having like Trans Month where you see all the flags, and there's something in November, and there's something, I don't know, in April or whatnot. And it's all these months.
Well, one thing to add to the religious aspect of this thing is the fact that the rainbow in the Bible has 7 colors. The rainbow for Pride has 6. And if we know anything about what that means, 6 is the devil's number, and 7 is, perfection. It's God's number. So let's always keep that in mind too,
Absolutely.
Yeah, when I was on my way down to my cruise trip, I went to Bourbon Street and I saw nothing but pride flags.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Not surprising. That was NOLA, right?
New Orleans, yeah.
Yeah. That should be called Sin City as well. And they got so much area, and they got Las Vegas that's called Sin City, but NOLA's getting that way now, sadly. So
yeah. And
I've been to Mardi Gras before, and I think New Orleans certainly deserves that title.
Yeah, it does.
I called it the center of sin.
Did y'all see some of the videos that these pride parades are putting out there? I mean, naked bike riders, men and women in front of children.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
Yeah. I am not a father yet, but let me just say that as a parent, your goal is to, number one, protect your child at all costs, prevent this nonsense, teach the Bible, teach values and what you value, and how any parent in their right mind would think that Pride is child friendly blows my mind. That is absolute abuse. And there are even people like there's the Gays Against Groomers that they even call this out multiple times. You look at California, there are people that have nothing on. There are drag shows where people are dancing in inappropriate ways. And I'm like, I wouldn't even go to a show like that, period. But the fact that there's families there, what has gotten into them?
Yeah, it's Satan. And that's that's the sad thing. Yep. Like Brandon said.
One thing I'll mention too is that notice they never do these drag shows in senior centers, right? I mean, because seniors are set in their ways. They're not going to change.
It's like a cane and hit you in the head.
That's right. They probably would hit them, right? But
and
they do this.
Just like these
because
and just like these companies too, they don't advertise it in Muslim countries.
Yeah, and the thing is, they do these drag shows in front of children because because of the impression that they put on them, and then they say, well, maybe I could be transitioned to a woman, and vice versa, and then they get pumped up with these cross hormone therapies, and they decide to have the gender reassignment surgeries. In some states, they allow that under the age of 18, which is terrible. Even in Virginia, children are allowed to have cross hormone therapies under the age of 18. In Charlottesville, I saw a woman last year bragging. She was like, oh yeah, my 3rd grade child, I put on hormones, daughter, because she wants to be a boy. And it is absolutely disgusting to see this happen. Yeah. And the Democrats are letting it happen. It's child abuse, plain and simple.
It is.
It is. It's not only neglectful, but you are playing with their lives. Parents that do that are playing with their children's lives. They are giving them hormones that have irreversible effects on the brain, on the body. And you want to pull them aside and go, what the heck is wrong with you? And, if this had happened, I don't know, 10 years ago, that would be considered abuse. Growing up in the late 90s, 2000s, you didn't even see none of this. When I was in high school, we had one person out of like over 4,000 students that was a female that dressed up like a male, and that was considered highly deviant. And it's like society has lost their standards under the quote unquote inclusion and acceptance. And it's really scary because the way learning happens is it takes multiple times to be exposed to something, to hear it out. And there's also a really good commentator who explains why this is also common. And without getting into the weeds of it, if anyone knows Larry Cook, he's a huge health advocate. He's a wonderful gentleman from California, father, Christian advocate. He is on X. I just say follow him and read his stuff because there's a medical explanation for part of it. And he's able to go on there uncensored and X and explain how this is happening and why this is becoming so much more commonplace. And, what really blows my mind is that as a soon-to-be psychologist, they were telling us in grad school when we had to go to residency and do like role plays and scenarios. This professor and I had sparred several times. She's ultra woke. She forces her beliefs on the students. And the scenario was that you have to be a clinical supervisor and you're seeing a supervisee who's a therapist because they're Christian and they don't think that it's morally right that the child wants to transition and the parents are against it. And the professor wanted you to talk to your supervisee and try to tell them to convince the parents, let their kid transition. I said, no, there ain't no way that's happening. I said, they should call Child Protective Services and, have them get involved and whatnot. And my professor was like, no, transition's medical care. I said, no, it ain't. It is not medical care. I said, until they are 18 years old and they can make that decision as a legal adult and pay for it, I'm with the parents on that. And the parents have got to get support in these states where this is allowed. Because there are states like California where they will transition your child without even telling the parents.
Yeah, I saw that recently. Yeah.
There's a great documentary that my friend Joey Bright created. She's a resident of Oakland, California. And it's called No Way Back, The Reality of Gender Affirming Care. And she interviews a bunch of children who transitioned under the age of 18. And they're called detransitioners because they transition and then they transition back to the original gender. But now they're sterile and, they have issues like osteoporosis and there's other medical issues that come up as well. And, when you when you go through that process, you also lose the ability to have an orgasm. And the thing is, these kids, they aren't told all these things. They're just told the whole, rosy aspect of it. And then they said when they transitioned back, all their friends who were with them abandoned them. They just felt like they were shadow people, which is a very interesting analogy. But I definitely recommend it. And, when I ran for state senate last year in District 11, I confronted some liberals about this issue. And I told them to watch this documentary. And they hit me back and said, well, detransitioners, they're just a minority of a minority. So I'm like, oh, so those people don't matter? So if they don't advance your cause anymore, you just discard their lives, even if they're children? I mean, how heartless can you be? But I saw it front and center in the 11th Senate District of Virginia.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah, and there's Go ahead, Vinny.
They need those who detransition, they need therapy because it's a depression. You go through, number one, you're going to have a lot of regret. That's going to be something that the therapist got to work on. You have to work with a medical doctor because, again, to Phil's point, the human bones are like a bank account. And when you're growing, that's why they always say you got to have certain nutrients, build that bank account up. Because when you don't reach peak bone mass, you get osteoporosis, so your bones fracture, and that increases the rate for mortality. And when you take hormones and you're playing with fire, you're going to take that bank account and you're going to deplete it so far down that by the time you're in your 20s and you decide, well, I don't want to do this no more, you're going to have the bones of a 70 or 80-year-old person who's not healthy. And it can be something as little as there was a case where somebody was going over a speed hump and just the force of it was enough to fracture their pelvis because their bones were that brittle. And then the drugs to treat the osteoporosis, they may or may not work. A lot of them have been pulled. Some of them make the osteoporosis work. If they take too much, it causes even more brittle bones. And your life is just really compromised because of choices that, again, were not explained to the parents, and the parents allowed it. And they just showed it as, okay, this is a wonderful life. And, I think that parents need to do a better job, as well as just the medical professionals, at treating what it really is, and it's depression. When you have children that are going through high school, some really tough years, anxiety, depression, all that, a lot of times that vulnerability is just exploited by the left, is exploited by the school systems that have these programs in place and say, oh, transition, you're going to feel better. And that's really what has happened in New Jersey, a lot of places.
Well, one more thing to add too is that I really think this is part of like the depopulation movement.
Yes.
That Bill Gates and these other folks are behind. It ties in with Bill Gates, funding all these vaccines, which has caused many adverse effects in folks around the world, in Africa and other countries where he's been focused on, and also, of course, the abortion mills that we have in America and elsewhere. What's interesting is that these policies, support death, and they're killing their own people who share their ideology. They're killing them off. And whereas, us conservatives, constitutional conservatives, Christians, we support life, and we support, human lives from birth to death. And there's a big distinct difference in that regard. But I know, tying back to the debate, Vinny, I sent you a video that comedian Russell Brand shared, comparing Biden from 2019 to 2024. Yep. And I don't know if you're able to pull the video on the screen, but I think it really shows a drastic difference of the cognitive decline that Biden has had in just a matter of 4 years. But I think it's about 4 minutes long, if you want to play that.
Mm-hmm. Pulling it up now.
Great. Great.
Yeah, and there's also one of the detransitioners I follow, Chloe Cole, was definitely bringing light to the after effects of youth transitions, because she was on T blocker and blockers at 13, double mastectomy at 15, and detransed at 16. She's 19 right now. Mm-hmm. So,
and she's testified in Congress. I think it was a few months ago. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen the before and after photos she's posted of what she looked like before and during, and then the now, and I'm just like, wow, like this poor kid. And I believe she took, I can't remember if it was the doctors and the surgeons to court, or her parents, or won the case. And I mean, that's one thing we definitely need. These people need to be exposed. I mean, and I do definitely agree on the depopulation movement. Before I got banned from one of these dating apps for my hunting picture, I ran into a profile that was very depopulate America, as she described herself.
Wow.
And I made fun of her for it. I was like, and go where? Because I'm fairly certain Scotland don't want my family back after the Battle of Culloden.
All right, here is the video.
Guess we're going back to Europe, like you say.
Not just only African Americans, but the LGBT community. He wants to get rid of the ability of Medicare I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing.
Hang on. Go back to the beginning.
Ordered by the.
If you would, please, Vinny. I want to point out something.
Please.
Will make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with look, if you will determine the outcome of this election, vote, vote, vote. If you're able to vote early in your state, vote early. If you're able to vote in person, vote in person. Vote whatever way is the best way for you, because he cannot stop you. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we can do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look.
Well,
I mean, really,
if you can go back to the beginning, I want to point out something. I don't know if you noticed anything with both of their faces.
Yep.
If you can pull it back up real quick. Let's go ahead and show everybody. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people notice it, but some might not. So it'd be.
Yeah, Trump's line at the end really summed it all up, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
And did y'all watch at the end of the? Did y'all watch at the end of the debate too? Of his wife trying to help him down the steps. And
Yep. When Trump just walked on the stage by himself, no problems, and then here he is. Oh, I got help. Walking slowly, and then she's on there.
He wasn't even sure which way was off the stage. I mean,
they have to physically guide him, otherwise he'll wander off.
And then after that, she starts getting up there and like celebrating. She's like, "You did it, Joe. You answered all the questions." I was
talking to him like a third grader. Yeah,
that was my gosh.
Yeah, that was cringe, dude. That was just cringe.
It was.
Is all I gotta say.
All right, cool. All right, just leave it right there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Look at their ears or his ears.
Yeah.
Is that the same person? I don't know about that. I don't think your ears changed that much in 4 years.
Chin is deeper. You can tell he has a lot of lost a lot of weight, wasted kind of. Because you do see that with cognitive decline. I mean, you have patients that they're usually very emaciated, and his eyes look different. It's like the soul's been sucked out.
Mm-hmm.
It's really sad because something is like, I really want him to get a cognitive test and see what is going on.
Yeah.
And look at the corners of the mouth too. There.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he's using one side of his face.
Yeah. It's wild.
Like he has Bell's palsy or something.
Like
possibly.
Facial paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He might. I think he did have a stroke, didn't he? Like years ago. So that would kind of make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and that's the thing with cognitive issues is you think about the brain, and this is like what we're taught in, because we assess for that, and it's really terrifying. Like, because most people don't get a baseline cognitive assessment. I wish more people would, because if you do have a stroke or a car accident or something, you could go back and say, okay, here's where you're defunct in, here's what's changed. You're only given X amount of cognitive functioning, and when you get old, you naturally lose some. And in the case of dementia, because dementia is a really broad illness, there's a lot of different kinds. Depending on what a person has or what form of it, it takes a different course. And it looks like he has just continued to just decline with the falls and the slurred speech, the not being able to put together a coherent sentence. And how are you going to be respected by other world leaders? That's the scary thing. Or even by like other governors. I mean, you go to another state, or you go to a veteran service, and you're saying stuff that's like, oh my gosh, half the people who don't know are going to be offended, rightfully so, and the other half probably feel sad.
Yeah, and to add to that, you got to think of the stresses of the office itself too. So that's making it 10 times worse on him. Up there, he's got 10,000 things going on, 10,000 people to answer to, wars that are starting now, and it's because of his decline as well. That's a major part, because like Trump mentioned during the debate, if like the whole Afghanistan withdrawal, first of all, it would have never happened under Trump. They wouldn't, just like the whole thing with Ukraine, that would have never happened either. And they see all this, and they saw the debate, and I feel like now they're going to take advantage of that. North Korea just fired a couple missiles because they're saying they're going to defend their sovereignty and everything. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
What do you guys think the future of the DNC is like? Because if this is their best candidate, that says a lot. And, you know, the whole idea was to present somebody who was claimed to be a moderate. You know, he's not. He just kind of has that older grandpa-like look. You know, he's not outlandish like some of the other Democrat senators. There's that one guy that wears that purple wig. Delorio, I think that guy's name is, in Rhode Island or something. You have Gavin Newsom, who is absolutely radical. And there's even Democrat voters in Pennsylvania that are like, no, we wouldn't vote for Gavin. And there's people that voted for Biden that are not going to do it a second time around. So
yeah, they're going to stay home.
What's in store, do y'all? And we'll just, I guess, start this. Whoever wants to go first and then pass it on. What do you think the future of the DNC is?
I'll go first. I think the future of the DNC is this. Right. They all put all their chips all in on Biden, and they're going to go bust. And once they go bust, they're going to go into like ants in a line who are cut off. They're lost. They're going to look for. They don't know who they're going to probably look for because they did not prepare for this. They don't have anybody in the wings. And Kamala, they don't like her. Nobody likes her. Your options are, some people are talking about Josh Shapiro, Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer, or who's that one gentleman? Who's that one guy in the, I could have sworn there was the other one. What? Whitmer, Newsom, Shapiro.
I'm trying to think of the other person. I'm not sure.
Like a former governor?
And I think it's a former governor, yes.
Definitely not Phil Murphy.
Buttigieg or whatever, how you said. Yes, could you imagine?
And I doubt, and I highly doubt that they'll back Bernie again. I doubt that.
Yeah, man.
And they, I don't know if they're serious about this or not.
Are you talking about West Virginia senator? They were talking about getting him, but he's independent now.
Independent now.
Yeah, he's not a Democrat, so that was talked about him running too as well. But I don't know. It's kind of weird too because he's like one of the longest. What is the word? Running senators or whatever for West Virginia and everything, and I mean he had it made, I guess, and now he's leaving office. So I don't know what he's already served as governor before, and now senator. So I don't know what his plans are in the future. It's hard to say.
But yeah, pretty much the DNC, they're in scrambling mode. Is what's their future is right now. They're have bet all day.
They're going to implode. Yeah, that's what you're getting at.
Yes, they're going to implode because they took all their poker chips, and now they're out.
Yep. One person I'd like to mention is Dean Phillips. He was one of the Democratic candidates who was challenging Joe Biden. He actually is the owner of the Talenti ice cream, which you probably see in the grocery stores. But he's, a congressman from Minnesota. But it was interesting. If you look at some of his Twitter posts and statements from just a few months ago before he dropped out, he mentioned that the Biden administration has been trying to remove me off the ballot because really the Democratic Party of Florida worked to remove him from the ballot. And there's another state they tried to remove him from. So just as they tried to remove Trump from the ballot in Colorado and other states, and Robert Kennedy Jr., who was running as a Democrat, but then switched to independent, which I think was a smart move on his part. So that way he could be on the ballot in all 50 states in November. I think Dean Phillips, he may have a future in calling out and say, hey, look, I told you so. You have Tyrant Biden who tried to remove not just people of other political parties, but even people within the Democratic Party from being on the ballot to challenge him. And it's funny because the Biden and his followers have been accusing Trump of being a dictator when it's Biden who's the one who's been acting like a dictator. So there's some folks who've been outspoken against Joe Biden who even ran against him. I think more people may be looking to them. So I think Dean Phillips probably has a future with the Democratic Party.
Yes. And here's another blow to the party too. Jamal Bowman, a member of the squad, finally getting the boot.
Yep. Gosh, did y'all see that AOC, like the
Yes.
rally that she held for him? She got up there and ran on stage, and she looked crazy. You know, that's the best way to say it. I mean,
Yeah, I
she
seen
was
that today.
hollering. I'm just like,
It's a fire alarm. But seriously, all the Jamal with the fire alarm. I mean, like the amount of lies is ridiculous because number one, if you don't know that a fire alarm is a fire alarm, that's even more concerning.
it's just fire alarm.
And you just like pull it, and it's
He's like, oh, it's a little kid with a button or whatever, you know.
And anybody who's a parent knows there comes a point in time where one of their kids is going to press an emergency button because it happens. When I was younger, I did that to my mom, and she left me with older family member. She was at work. She gets a phone call. You won't believe what Vinny did because I like to just touch things, and the button said emergency. I pressed it.
Oh.
I was like really young, and it led to like emergency services getting called. But like, if a kid does it, it's one thing, but a grown adult, it's like, did he really? He didn't like what was going on. I'm invincible because I'm on the left, and that's what happens. Is that he got a slap on the wrist? Could y'all just imagine if that was I don't know Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she's mad, so she pulls that fire alarm? They would crucify her in the media.
Yeah, they would.
She'd
They'd be
probably get
calling
arrested.
on and everything else. Yeah,
He's going this thing.
Or if you're Steve Bannon, hey, I mean, if you're Hunter Biden and you evade a congressional subpoena, you get a slap on the wrist. But if you're Steve Bannon, you go to the federal prison just like he did earlier today.
That's sad, that whole thing. And he's
and
in
I
the
met
prison
with
with
Steve Bannon last month. There was an event with Congressman Bob Good. Really, he's a very patriotic gentleman. And he said, I'm going to continue the fight for MAGA in jail. And it's, they can lock me up, but they won't shut me up. So I was very encouraged to hear him say that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I agree on that. And you know, and speaking of this debate, who do y'all think won it? I think it's obvious Trump won it. Hands down.
Yeah,
not
Trump,
even a contest.
Trump ate that guy's lunch.
Yeah,
Trump won as well. Absolutely. But Robert Kennedy is also claiming that he won because he did an event called The Real Debate, but he wasn't even on the debate stage. But you know, that was just a political spin that he's put out there. So there's really Robert Kennedy and Trump have both claimed that they've won the debate. So, but I think personally, Trump won it.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree, and that was something too. You know, I kind of wish they would have had RFK there because it would have been really interesting to see like just how he'd react with certain things. And I think, you know, if the DNC wants any chance of surviving, which I think that they are just, it's like a bank account that's continuing to go down. A lot of these older adults are either waking up or all that. And this younger generation, some of them that I see, there's hope. There's a lot of them that are young and they are fighters. Mm-hmm. They're tired of this woke nonsense. Because when you have a rough environment like that, when you're in school every single day and they're shaming you for being a regular male who's a Christian, you know, even a normal woman shamed because you're not a certain way. You're not woke. You're not, you know, changing your gender. Something's wrong with you. That makes people realize that they've got to speak up against this, where my generation made a mistake by just letting it happen and, you know, saying, oh, we got to be PC. We can't, you know, offend people.
Yeah,
I have hope. And I think that like you have RFK Jr., which I've known people that were Democrats that are supporting him as an independent. That's their prerogative. That's cool. Because RFK Jr. does have some good points. Like when his point on the vaccines, I agree with him because he spoke out against the risks. He came to New Jersey and he tried to put the Democrats here in their place because we almost lost our religious exemption in Jersey. He made a statement recently preserving, you know, Confederate history. He was really upset to see what happened in Richmond. To have a Democrat say that was like, oh my gosh, yes, we need more of you. Because then you have people on the right, people on the left. This is our proud American history. This is our proud Southern heritage. This is our proud Virginian history. Why are we destroying it? This is stupid. Let's stop.
Well, if you can shut the Southerner up, you shut up the last person who will be against you. You know, we want our freedom. So
yep,
that's right.
Agreed. Yeah,
we do.
And as far as the younger generation, I put it to you this way: my son come from school 3 months ago before they let out. and he got called a straight colonizer. He's 11 years old.
Wow.
He said,
Thanks.
"Daddy, what's that?" He said, "Daddy, what's that?" My other son, that's a liberal. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Colonizer. Yeah,
That's been a term that they
Great
just
white
throw it
colonizer.
around. And it's anytime that
that
you
is
have,
a bad thing.
it's not a bad thing at all. It means that you're civilized and that you have respect and manners, because apparently there's soon to be teachers that are saying, "Oh, raising your hand is a sign of colonization. Just shout the answer." I mean, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you look at history, any nation that's been colonized has become better.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, look at Europe. I mean, it's been colonized how many times in its history? I mean, if it was predominantly Celt, it was later Italian and Roman.
Yeah.
And then you have the Germanic tribes.
Yeah. Speaking of that, have you been keeping up with the French election stuff that's been going on? Because there's been a bunch going on with like the far right. That's what they keep calling them. The right wing and then the left wing, and they're out there protesting, or rioting. Actually, that's what they're doing right now.
Yeah, the Yellow Vest riots.
Marine Le Pen, she's winning right now, so that's it's a turning point for them. I think, they got all these migrants that keep coming in and destroying their culture and everything. And I'm hoping that it's opening everybody's eyes. You got all these countries like the one. Let's see, who was it? It wasn't Brazil, was it? Who's the one that got the libertarian? That's
the
Colombia.
It wasn't Colombia. No,
not Colombia.
Not South America.
Belize?
No.
Argentina?
Argentina.
Milei. Javier Milei. Who's he president of?
Argentina. That's it. They're getting these libertarian. He's literally cutting down all the government programs. It's awesome to see. I mean, he's getting rid of every single one. All these countries.
I love Javier Milei. He tells it like it is. He tells it like it is. And did y'all see his reaction to Biden bumping heads with Papa Francesco? And you can see Javier going, "What the heck are you doing?"
Oh, I know. And speaking of, Biden, his legacy in office, quote unquote, the one thing I'll never forget is that biter dog, that they knew the dog was aggressive because, hey, I have dogs and all that, I've had dogs before that, when you guys have Akitas, they're really vicious. They only like one person and that's about it. And even with their family, they tolerate the family, but that one person and that's all. Strangers, they don't do well at all. And I know better than if I took my Akita and I brought her to, a park or anything like that, she would be tearing up everyone else's dogs. So I didn't do that as a responsible dog owner. I wouldn't bring her to places that, were, restaurants that were outside that allow dogs because I didn't want her injuring anyone, because that's what they are. They're guard dogs. German Shepherds. There are German Shepherds, especially if they're rescues. They could be extremely, extremely, extremely aggressive. So I actually know the one person who's going to remain nameless. She was the one who gave Biden the biter German Shepherd, and there was a photo on her Facebook that I actually have still of it, which I could probably show off air. And I'm like, that's the biter.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Where they knew, and this dog was known to have anger issues because the shelter had dogs that had a lot of problems. And if you look at the dog, they'll say doesn't do well with people. They knew this, and they put the dog in the White House.
Yeah, and I heard that either that dog or the other one tore up something in the White House that was 100+ years old. That the Heritage Society or somewhat had to restore.
It was probably the White House Historical Association. Yeah,
that side of the political system is not known for that.
Secret Service says it destroyed tape of Biden's dog. This was on June 18th, 2024. They destroyed the footage of the German Shepherd attacking one of its agents. And apparently they had quite a few reports of the dog attacking multiple people. And I think it really just goes to show y'all that this sums up this entire presidency. going into the White House, destroying history, not valuing tradition, not valuing anything beautiful, classical, or valuable, and you just devalue something like who in their right mind lets their dog run around a historical building, destroy stuff, tear stuff up? I know for a fact that if I was ever governor in charge of a state house that was really historic, I would appreciate what was there. I wouldn't wreck it or bring, hey, let's bring our pets and let them just tear it up. No common sense. And it really just highlights, this is the epitome of the last, few 4 years. Common sense ain't common. There are no values, and it's hard to find genuine people on both sides of the arena because, we have a Republican controlled Congress, and from New Jersey, I am embarrassed who is in office because our Republicans are at least in New Jersey. I can't speak for other states. Our Republicans, for the most part, are no better than the left. And they claim that our Republicans are extremists. Oh my gosh. Our Republican, Tom Kean, that's in there is the one who helped to put men and women's bathrooms in New Jersey schools.
It's sad.
Yeah.
He has not stood up on anything that was, classical, conservative, for fear of being labeled radical. I talked to his staffer multiple times about telling him, can he just stand up for Arlington? Why can't he stand up for that memorial? Why can't he stand against this? He doesn't want to offend people.
Well, I know there's 192 Republicans, including my Congressman Bob Good, who voted to restore Moses Ezekiel's monument at the Arlington National Cemetery. But we have the squishy Republicans who voted against it. So, we just got to hope that next year after Trump's back in office and we, God willing, have a Republican majority in the Senate and the House of Representatives, that we can actually get that pushed through. But they got to whip those squishy Republicans to vote the right way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not be rhinos. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder until we do watch.
What?
I wonder with Trump in office, what could he personally put it back?
I don't know. I think that's a congressional thing.
He can there's different ways that Arlington can go back up. And I always say for those that want updates, follow Save Southern Heritage Florida and follow Defend Arlington because everything there is current. You get the updates. Now there's different routes. Like if you draw it out, that monument can go back up. The naming commission themselves even said this monument can go back up. The president can make it happen. It's not going to happen under Biden. We know that.
Yeah.
That's option number one. Option number two is with an act of Congress. Congress has the strength to do it on the Republican side. And I'm so grateful for the Republicans that did, the majority that says, yes, we want it back. I'm very disappointed in the Dirty Dozen, which some of them were, two of the three were from New Jersey, from our state, that voted to, not put it back up. And that broke my heart. And there's also other ways that it might be able to go back up. There's one loophole is because this is a Jewish American's grave. There's a lot of rules in that religion. And by them removing his grave, violated that religious code. And in this, wave that we're experiencing now, this anti-Semitic wave where, everything happening, why are they not acting on Arlington? It shows the double standard the Democrats have, that they say one thing, but their actions say another.
Yeah. It's interesting for sure. Because I know that originally it was going to get put up in Newmarket, but I'm not sure what's happening with that. It would be it just doesn't feel right there, I mean, it'd be cool to see, but yeah. Or are they going to move Ezekiel there as well? I mean,
that's his grave. I mean, it's almost like somebody saying, I don't like your headstone, it's offensive, and digging it up. I mean, it's so morbid to do something like that. It's grave robbery. There is nowhere that this memorial can go other than Arlington. It belongs in Arlington as his tombstone. And he had put in his will that he wants that to be his tombstone. That was in his will. It was
they're going against his will right there in itself. I mean,
it's like A.P. Hill, General A.P. Hill. They moved his grave 2 years ago to Culpeper. And I actually was at his reinterment. There was over 1,000 people over there. And that was quite a beautiful ceremony. But as great as the ceremony was, I wish it didn't happen because he should have stayed in Richmond. But, but Democrats have their way. They move Moses Ezekiel's grave as well. They don't care.
Yeah.
They would move everyone in the circle out of there.
Yeah. Well, and the sad thing with A.P. Hill is he's been moved like 5 times now. He was originally in Petersburg or south of there. Then he was at Hollywood Cemetery. Then he was, he was it was 4 times at his monument now in Culpeper. So, am I missing the location? It seemed like there was another one. Maybe not.
No, I
Maybe
think you're right. It was 4 times. Yeah, because he was in Hollywood Cemetery after he was moved from where he was killed in the Petersburg area, and then to Richmond because it was the HOA Association, I believe. Yeah, they wanted to build the monument on the middle of a road because they want to attract more people to that neighborhood. So it was done for financial reasons for the third reason, but of course the fourth reason was because Mayor LeVar Stoney didn't want him anymore, and they won that lawsuit in spite of John Hill and his family members being there. And I was actually sat in court with John Hill, hearing the arguments being put forth. And the family just said, and they wanted the monument, and the judge denied it. So the monument is still in Richmond with General Lee, General Jackson, the other ones that were removed. And the judge denied it. And I think it's out of spite and vengeance. That's really, what it sums up.
And now LeVar Stoney's running for governor.
Lieutenant governor, actually. He was running for governor because Abigail Spanberger is so popular. He decided to take it down a notch, and he's just running for lieutenant governor now. I think him and 2 other Democrats.
Oh, wow.
What a mess. And I hope that there's voters that say this is wrong. We're not voting that way because of what he did. And he's been bragging on X about his legacy of cancel culture, grave robbery, and destruction, because that was a grave. And that, that was his cenotaph. That was his tombstone. And the fact that they are, again, stealing a grave. You can't have the grave. That is his tombstone. And they're taking possession of it. And it is just so shameful because they did that in Florida with General Loring. General Loring was the first Confederate to be with this cancel culture, his grave desecrated. And that was done in 2020 when it was allowed with that whole scamdemic and everything. Under all that chaos, they were able to do that in Florida. And they were able to remove his gravestone, remove his remains. And then they did it again with Forrest the second time. And then AP Hill.
And then
the fact that this is happening in Southern ground.
Yeah.
The fact that this is happening in the South is a slap to the face.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm also hearing that they're coming after our Confederate dead too, our soldiers, because they want the land for development.
Yeah. Well, there's been some stuff going on in North Carolina. It's not necessarily Confederate related, but there's like a native burial ground, and some developers are wanting to just completely bulldoze that whole area. And you know what I'm talking about, Brandon? I think I shared it the other day. You probably saw it. Yeah.
I seen what you're talking about. It's disgusting. The fact that we as a society have come to digging up deceased people is absolutely, it blows my mind. I can't understand it.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Disgusting.
Mm-hmm. Can't let them rest in peace.
But that's why I would argue that this attack on Southerners is 1, a political thing, 2, a spiritual thing, and 3, a control thing. They're all tied together.
Mm-hmm.
They are. It began with us because we were the low-hanging fruit, and now they're just pushing the envelope.
Well, and then, like you said, a couple months ago, they're going after like the Sherman Monument, even like back to our Revolutionary War monuments, the Thomas Jefferson one, to be more specific. So they're not going to stop until all of our history is gone, because that's their whole thing. They're wanting a revisionist future where none of the bad stuff, quote unquote bad stuff, happened, and it's what their views, their narrative happened.
Pretty much anything before 1970. Needs to be gone.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. It's wiped clean, and it's really just ironic, especially with the history textbooks, is seeing how these books now encourage activism versus learning history. I mean, we saw all that happen with you had these rioters that the last few weeks or May, they went to DC, they defaced these memorials. You had National Park Service sitting there getting pelted with trash and getting things thrown at him as he's getting smoke bombed and spray painted and all that. And then I'm like, what on earth is this? That there's no reinforcements? And you know that true conservatives never act like that at all. But hypothetically, if they went up to a memorial in DC that they didn't like and they started chipping it away at it or doing that, because they're conservative, in a New York minute, they'd be subdued, they'd be tackled, they'd be put away. They let them do this. And you saw the president. He didn't even denounce none of it. You saw a lot of the Democrats. They ignored a lot of it. Very few of them spoke out against it. You saw, again, Sherman in New York, badly spray painted. Nothing was safe at all. And then you have people all outraged about the monuments. I go, where were y'all in 2020 when you had monuments being torn down? 2017, things attacked.
Yep.
I
Silent Slam,
yeah.
I think that was
this has been going on for a while.
Yeah.
I know.
They let that happen last month. And get this, in Seattle, Washington, there were 3 teenagers who were arrested. I mean, arrested for being on scooters and for putting skid marks on a painted pride flag. It's not even a flag. It's painted. And they said it was done out of hate. Kids do pranks. You know, there's people who do skid marks.
Then you burn an American flag and they say it's First Amendment.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you burn the American flag, but if you put a skid mark on a fake flag that's painted, jail time for you. That's the message they put out there.
Yeah.
And let's not forget Seattle, how they do not respect anything at all. So in Seattle, I did a little program where I kind of talked about the start of iconoclasm in cemeteries, which is, the systemic destruction of memorials. Because let's face it, cemeteries ain't safe at all. That's the most unsafe place to be because there's no security cameras for the most part. There's no people can go out there. So Seattle, Washington had a lot of Confederate ties after the war. A lot of Confederate veterans moved up there. And the women that were up there, these wonderful ladies, they put this beautiful memorial with granite made from Stone Mountain to make this memorial. And the battle flag that would always fly over that memorial is now in the museum in Harrisonburg. So this monument, gorgeous, a lot of history. The UDC chapter that was up there, very small, because it was Seattle. And they tried everything to keep that monument up there. One of their members who quit the organization, she was no longer a member. Her name was Heidi. She would go up there and call the monument an eyesore. She would say this memorial needs to come down. She was causing such a ruckus, raising awareness of it, where a lot of people had no idea it was there. They toppled the monument in 2020, destroyed it with a sledgehammer, whatever remained of it, spray painted it, and nobody was arrested for this. They had people in the news that were, allowing this, and it was just the craziest thing.
And that was which one again? That was
this was in Seattle.
The one in Seattle.
Okay.
It was the UCB Memorial.
Mm-hmm. And that reminds me of the one in Atlanta, the Lion Atlanta,
Yes.
and I think it's in Oakland Cemetery. Is that right? Yeah, that's completely. I think it's gone now, but it got completely defaced, and I'm pretty sure they destroyed it as well. That was really sad to see.
It was put in storage. So, yeah, it was very badly damaged. They chipped away at it. They threw corrosive liquid on it. They used a shaver. I mean, it shows that there is no more common ground at all. Y'all could not, there is nothing. There no compromise. My response, put them all back, because it really showed when laws are not enforced, this is what your society becomes, a disaster.
Yes.
And the fact that Seattle would say, you left skid marks on a painted thing on the road where cars drive over, and they would arrest someone over that, but not for destroying a veterans memorial that honored deceased veterans. That is just like, what the heck?
Yeah, it's backwards. Yeah, we're regressing.
Even when they first came against us, what did they attack first? Our cemeteries.
Yeah.
Because I've seen pictures of headstones hit with 10 to 20-pound hammers and spray painted. Mm-hmm. And when they say put them in a museum, put them in cemeteries, our cemeteries were the ones hit first before they went after our monuments.
Museums were firebombed. And that's something that I wish during one of these debates would get brought up, is what happened during these riots and how the left just continued to throw fuel in the fire. And in all these cities that had bad rioting, to my knowledge, there hasn't been a single one that was a Republican-led city. All these Democrat-run cities, they allowed the rioting. They allowed it. Go ahead and do it. Do whatever you want. You're going to get a slap on the wrist. If you get arrested, you'll get pardoned.
Yeah,
Trump barely touched on that during the debate. How soon will the rioting begin?
Yeah,
was
that's going to
as
happen.
Trump wins this
I think
November,
it'll
how quickly
kick
we'll
off
ride it
again.
I'm nervous. That's my fears, because anytime you get around in election time, that's when you start to see this iconoclasm just go full force. That's when you start to see it kind of come to a head. And when he gets in, it's going to be like, let's do it again. Because it is so just, unless the laws are enforced, because Florida, Save Southern Heritage Florida was able to get a law passed, lobby for it back in, I think, 2021, where they upped the penalties for vandalizing memorials. And to my knowledge, there has not been a single case of vandalism on any of the memorials at all since doing that.
Now they just need to put back the monument in Jacksonville, Florida.
100% agree. So that thing, what happened there is the update I have on that. That top part, the statues they took out, was only part of the memorial. The whole thing is the monument, the pavilion and all that. So the fact that, Mayor Deegan left that up there, it just speaks volumes. All right, y'all, because we are at the over the hour mark, and I figured it's kind of a good time to wrap up now on the debate commentary. Does anyone have any last things to mention on that debate, or what they think is what the second one, if there's a second one, is going to look like?
I think that's in September. Yeah. It's hard to really say. It depends on what they decide to do. If they keep Biden in, or if they're going to replace him. If they do replace him, that might be really bad for us, because people obviously don't like Biden because they see his mental decline or whatever. But they put somebody like Gavin Newsom in, or let's just throw out the name because it's been going around everywhere, Michelle Obama, because they keep throwing that out. As soon as they put her in the race, it's over for us. That's the sad thing, because you look at all these, Gen Z. Well, I wouldn't say Gen Z necessarily, but millennials, Gen X. A lot of them support the Obamas and things like that. So, it'll be bad if they put her in.
Especially Michelle Obama being a minority. I think that the left will eat that shit up.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that they virtue signal. It's the constant identity politics. The first, XYZ. It's every gender, race, culture, all that. They will do everything to make it the first. Well, being the first does not mean you're qualified. There's a lot of qualified people from different cultures, but because they have experience. Michelle has not a single political, other than the first lady, has not held political office to my knowledge, has not had governorship, has not served in Congress. So that's kind of why I'm erring on the side. I don't think they're going to run, Michelle, because of lack of experience. It would probably be, if it was a female, somebody in office like Whitmer.
I think Whitmer's probably going to be it, because she's the DNC vice chair anyway right now, I believe, house. So, perfect candidate for that. And she was actually in my city here recently, a couple weeks ago. She was there. That's all I'm going to say about that. But she was around here. So.
Well, I'll say I think Trump did an excellent job making the border the number one issue. In Virginia, recently, there were 3 people killed by illegals, and he called out one girl, only 12 years old, who was raped and killed by an illegal alien. And, we don't hear Biden mentioning her, but Trump brings it up at his rallies. And he mentioned it again when I saw him in Chesapeake at his rally with Governor Youngkin, Congressman Jen Kiggins, and others. And, another interesting thing I'll bring up is that the day after the debate, Trump, not only did he talk about the border and his analysis of the debate, but he also talked about resurrecting Ronald Reagan's Star Wars program, to have an Iron Dome over America. He says, if Israel has it because of all the missile attacks, and, the United States has come to their defense, but, really they need to have their own missile system. America needs to have a system like that too, especially because we're closer to World War III than any other time in history. I mean, right now there's even Russian warships in Cuba because, Biden keeps thumbing his nose and saying Ukraine's going to join NATO. And the more that he keeps pushing that issue, the closer that the United States and Russia are going to get to war. So Trump sees this, and I think that's very smart of him to resurrect the Star Wars program that Ronald Reagan had been pushing decades ago.
Yeah. Also, check out the Project 2025. I've been reading into that. I think it's excellent. That's Trump's proposals of what he's going to do, when he gets back into office. So check that out as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think this was a trial run for the DNC to see if our critiques had any merit at all. And now that, because they were also expecting Trump to be Trump, campaign Trump, not teleprompter Trump, but kind of like what I already said, Trump took their little rules that they try to put on him, and he turned it on itself, and just let Biden speak and show his neck to the audience, essentially. And now that the public as well as the DNC are seeing this, the big question is, is he gonna voluntarily leave and not run again, or are they going to 25th Amendment him?
That's what's probably going to happen. Put Kamala in. That'll be scary.
Yeah,
because like you said earlier, she's not even popular in her own party. So could you imagine her running everything? That's just, and I'm pretty sure at that point, wouldn't is it Philip Johnson? Wouldn't he be the vice president?
No,
speaker?
Nancy Pelosi would be.
How's
I think
that?
Nancy Pelosi would be because
No,
no
it
way.
would be Joaquin Jeffries, right? They would have the minority.
No. Johnson would be vice president technically because
that's what I said. Yeah, he would be the vice president. So then he could get her removed. Could you imagine?
Yeah.
That'll be interesting for sure.
And my one piece of advice for Trump is to do a full clean house, because this is one of the mistakes that was made the first time. People that had ties to the previous administration that weren't the best were still in there. And somebody who I always consider a mentor, Dr. McLean, has a great example of this, because there are people from Terry McAuliffe's administration still in there, and Youngkin is allowing that. And this has got to be the thing. Whoever is in charge has got to do a clean house. It's got to happen, because if you have people from previous administrations who might say, I'm a moderate, are you now really? And they are there just kind of continuing to do their evil, continuing to allow nonsense to happen, undermining everything he's doing. That's part of the problem. So
he did mention that in the debate and everything. He talked about, he said, I'm pretty sure Biden never fired a single person, whatever. And he said, you got to fire him. He fired Comey and others. And the other thing he's got to do is not have neocons in there as well. He had people like Bolton in there that, and honestly, let's go ahead and add Nikki Haley. Please don't have her in his cabinet, because she's going to make it 10 times worse. Because she, I don't know if y'all saw it, but there was like a bomb or something like that, and she signed it and everything and said, finish them about, Israel and everything, which that's a whole different subject. But I still think that's just really bad, not a good look, I mean, I guess
Nikki Haley has a way of making it worse. She can make a small little campfire into a forest fire, because she contradicts herself, multiple points where she tried to get the Southern support after she did that nonsense in Charleston and really accelerated the nonsense. And it's just ridiculous. And I think it's a good time for her just to retire. She can find another career. She can maybe be an author. But her time in politics is very limited, if at all. She's never going to hold office again in South Carolina. That's for sure. After all that disaster that happened.
There's an organization called Haley Supporters for Biden.
Oh, I know.
Not. Yeah, there are Haley supporters who are voting for Biden. Just
did y'all see? Yeah, did y'all see that? What's that guy, the congressman that was with? He was on the J6 committee. And he's from Michigan. Is it Michigan? I think, or I can't think of it. Anyway, he endorsed
Kinzinger. Is that the one?
Yeah, Kinzinger. Yeah. It's him.
Illinois.
He went and endorsed Biden the other day. He's like, I'm a proud conservative, and I'm endorsing Biden. I'm like,
shocker.
Okay, no.
Yeah.
He is the farthest conservative, and it's crazy because it's the Republicans like Adam Kinzinger and Nikki Haley and even Liz Cheney that for the most part, the New Jersey Republicans eat up. Now, in New Jersey, we have 20% of the GOP that's really, really good. The problem is that any time they try to run for something in office, this is the nonsense that goes on behind the scenes. It's you don't want to vote for Pastor Rizzo. Do you know he has a permit to conceal carry? And then they go, oh, he conceals carry? That's so dangerous. What the heck? There's actually Republicans in New Jersey where they love Nikki Haley. And there was one gentleman who was the prospective president of the Young Republicans who knows all these Democrats. And they said, when are you going to walk over to the Democrat side? And he votes like a Democrat. He supports Democrats. This year, he's not supporting Trump because he doesn't like him, thinks he's too radical. Was against having prayer at the Young Republicans meetings, and was against, if I had a shirt on that was Trump, didn't like it, would try to, tell you what you can and can't wear, would try to censor members. And me and him would just go at it because I don't back down, but I'm respectful about it. I'm sorry you don't like it. I'm going to do it anyway.
Speaking of that, I'll go ahead and talk a little bit for just a minute about the whole thing I dealt with a couple months ago. Everybody probably saw it on my page or whatever. I was elected to my, local Republicans chair, and basically they got it dechartered. The whole thing happened mainly because, I have anything Confederate on my page. That's just really sad. And the First Amendment, I guess, doesn't apply anymore. You don't get freedom of speech or expression or anything like that. So we're, working on creating another local conservative group and everything, getting that on the ground, off the ground, whatever. But just having to deal with all that, we got to find better conservatives that can lead, and that's what I'm trying to do. And that's what I was trying to do with my YR chapter. But here we are. So.
And that's the fruit of Reconstruction.
Yeah.
It's still happening. And it was never completed. So there's still hope. But they're still trying to reconstruct us, and it ain't happening.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
We were told as members of Young Republicans, because when we were in college and we had the chapter there, they had an anti-gun event. And, we wanted to go there with peaceful signs, with statistics for the Second Amendment, and have the right to have our voices heard. And that was not allowed. So we said, you know what, we're going to show up there anyway with our signs. Peaceful, smile and wave, and that's it. We were not disruptive at all. Our Young Republicans chapter was factioned, and they had half of them saying, no, that makes us look militant. I don't want to do that. We had members that were telling us not to do it, and we had some of the, Republican committees in that area saying, oh, don't do it. You don't want to cause a stink. Well, me and several others said, let's do it. Let's just go down there and do it. What's the worst that could happen? We were there. Some of us were able to speak and have our voice heard for like 5 minutes, give a few statistics, say what we thought about the Second Amendment in support of it, and shake their hands, and that was it. We were very peaceful. We were not, nasty. We didn't, lose control like some of their speakers did. And I had one of the professors come up and shake my hand, and she goes, oh my gosh, you guys were so wonderful. Thank you for being willing to listen and, have your voice heard anytime. And then our Young Republicans chapter was dead silent, saying, we don't know who they are. That's the tone they took, because they thought that standing up for the Second Amendment was too radical in New Jersey.
That's sad.
That's very sad.
Yep.
All right, gentlemen. Well, I'm fixing to call a night. I don't know about y'all.
Sounds fun to me. So, just want to go ahead and give a shout out.
One last note I'll say is that when the good folks don't speak up, that's when we lose. But thank you for speaking up.
I think his microphone's muted.
On the Second Amendment, on much more.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, just going to say this real quick. We have our North Carolina chapter of the Southern Independent Association meeting coming up next Saturday, July the 13th at 12 p.m. noon. So let us know if you'd like to come to it. Anybody that's watching, let us know next couple of days, because Brandon has to get a list to the guard, police guard, whatever. It's outside the gate.
Yeah, the gate door.
So please let us know. Yeah, please let us know. Try to have a good turnout. Miss Mindy's going to be there as well, so that's going to be great as well.
I need to know how many people. I need to know how many people are coming so I can get food and beverages together as well. So,
yeah. So, Jim, if you'd like to come to it too, please, it'd be awesome. So, yep, that's next weekend.
And for those of y'all on here, after we end the live, we usually, hang out and chat after. So everyone's welcome to do that as we continue to go live more. And, we're going to be going live a lot more. A lot of stuff happened, a few weeks ago. I had a really bad lung infection, then a stomach infection after, but I'm all better. And I'm really looking forward to continuing on with this. I know for our subscription program on here, I am adding some more videos because I took the time to record myself doing some cooking across Dixie. So some good old fashioned Southern food, how to make it. I'm also doing other recipes, kind of going back to my roots as culinary, because I came from a culinary background.
What? For what? Tomorrow?
All right, y'all. Y'all stay Southern, and Deo Vindice, y'all.
Dave and DJ.
Dave and DJ, and stay unreconstructed, y'all.
Amen.
Deo Vindice.